The chief of the Met Police, Sir Mark Rowley, has hinted that they might go after Elon Musk for criminality regarding his posts on X about the situation in the UK. And of course, the mainstream media has gone bananas about it. That's a technical term, by the way. But if you want a refreshing change from the mainstream media, the absolute raw truth, dissecting the law, presenting to you as it is, please subscribe to my channel. I've just passed, thanks to all of you, 500,000 subscribers. I would like to make that 1 million subscribers. Hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. So just as I start recording here, I see another post pop up from Elon Musk saying observing protests is apparently illegal. That's something I'll come back to in a moment because there's a little bit more to that as well. But of course, there is always more to it. Now, the mainstream media has gone bananas, I use the technical term, over this video clip here, which I will show you of Sir Mark here talking about criminality both on and offline and what they can do about it. So let's take a listen to this clip first, and you can let me know what you think, and I will discuss the law as it might apply in this situation, because as always, it's not quite that simple. Listen to this.
We will throw the full force of the law at people, and whether you're in this country committing crimes on the streets or committing crimes from further afield online, we will come after you.
Talk to me about that, because we have seen some high-profile figures whipping up the hatred. You talked about it in there with the officers, in fact, about this being added to by online commentary. I mean, I'm even thinking of the likes of Elon Musk getting involved. What are you considering when it comes to dealing with people who are whipping up this kind of behaviour from behind a keyboard, maybe in a different country?
Being a keyboard warrior does not make you safe from the law. You can be guilty of offences of incitement, of stirring up racial hatred. There are numerous terrorist offences regarding the sort of publishing of material. All of those offences are in play if people are provoking hatred and violence on the streets, and we will come after those individuals just as we will physically confront on the streets the thugs and the obs who are causing the problems for communities.
Now, that's obviously true because we've seen people going to prison for things that they've written online. But whilst he doesn't expressly say that they will go after Elon Musk in this short video clip, it does hint that people internationally might be held accountable. And so obviously some people have said, well, based on that short video clip and the hints that have been provided there, that they might come after people that are making these sort of comments online. Obviously, people have now speculated as to whether or not they could bring Elon Musk to the UK for prosecution. Spoiler alert, the short version is, in my humble view, is no, that's not likely to happen. The longer version, of course, is what you're here for. So please do subscribe for a refreshing change to tell you exactly how the law might apply in situations like this. And the law that would apply in situations like this, via Elon Musk and anyone else internationally making these kind of comments, if they did want to come after them for that sort of thing. The key really in what Sir Mark said there is inciting violence. I'll come back to that in a moment. But so far, I think that the phrase that they're referring to was Elon Musk saying civil war is inevitable and comments like that. So whilst you might not agree with that sort of phrase and you might not like that kind of phrase, at the same time, many of you might think that that is just exercising free speech, which is a very important thing that we'll come on to in this video. But the law that would apply in a situation like that would be the Extradition Act of 2003. Extradition, for those that are not familiar, is if someone commits an offence in a different country and you want to bring them to this country to prosecute them, they'd be extradited from one place to another. And there are different categories of territories that this applies. And we're looking specifically with regard to the US under Section 137, and it would be a Category 2 territory. That is, Category 1 is typically European countries. Category 2 is typically other countries with whom we have a certain treaty. And with regard to extradition. Now, there is what we call a dual criminality aspect to extradition. In very simple terms, that means that it must be, whatever they've done, whatever they're accused of doing, must be an offence both here in the United Kingdom and an offence wherever that's committed in another country. And so if they're in another country and they've committed the offence there, or they belong to that country and they've committed the offence there, it must be an offence in both places. So think the most serious of crimes, without using too many specific words to get my video flagged up again. But if you were to think of the most horrific crimes, which would obviously be a crime in both the UK and the US, then fine. Then if someone, we've seen that sort of case recently in the media where someone in the US, a US citizen, famous US citizen, has been accused of a crime and therefore extradited to the UK for prosecution. And in that case turned up and was acquitted. But here we're talking about posts that Elon Musk, if in this hypothetical scenario that people have inferred that has been referenced here, if we were talking about Elon Musk being extradited to the UK for offences for things that he's posted online, then there's a little bit more to it than that. Because as you well know, that the US has a very strong protection of free speech. And they use the term in the most robust of terms, free speech. You are entitled to the right to free speech. And so coming first of all to the Extradition Act here, this sets out the dual criminality. And so in simple terms here, this section sets out where a person's conduct constitutes an extradition offence for the person in this part, where the person is accused in a Category 2 territory, so the United States, of an offence constituted by the conduct, or has been convicted in that territory of an offence. And then the conduct constitutes an extradition offence in relation to Category 2 if 3, 4, or 5 are satisfied. And those are below. Those conditions are that the conduct occurs in the Category 2 territory, so it occurs in the United States. The conduct would constitute an offence under the law of the relevant part of the United Kingdom, punishable with imprisonment or other form of detention for a term of 12 months or greater. So only if the possible prison sentence is at least 12 months or more. And the third one here under C is very important, which is the conduct is so punishable under the law of the Category 2 territory. So in other words, if it is not an offence in the United States, it does not satisfy this bit of law for extradition to the UK. So then we talk about, what would it amount to? What would it need to amount to a criminal offence in the United States? And so, as you're probably aware, and if you're not aware, you can watch my previous videos on this, that certain speech can amount to a public order offence in the UK and can even amount to a terrorism offence in the UK. But what sort of speech would it need to be to amount to an offence, an equivalent offence, because it doesn't have to be the same exact offence, it just has to be an equivalent offence in the United States as we have in domestic law here in the United Kingdom. There needs to be this duality of criminality in what has been complained of. So if there's a statement, so let's say Elon Musk, for example, makes a statement on X, albeit it's his own platform, regardless, makes a public statement. If it would amount to an offence in the UK, that's one thing, but it would also have to amount to an offence in the United States. So, not being a US attorney, my research is somewhat limited, so my American counterparts can probably jeer and poke fun at my research here, but nonetheless, I did a quick look about this, and I found this case here, the Brandenburg in Ohio, which the primary holding, which is the principal point of law that's returned here, is that a state may not forbid free speech advocating for the use of force or unlawful conduct unless this advocacy is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action. So in other words, unless the statement is directly calling for or inciting or producing imminent lawless action such as riot and fighting and war and so on, then it is not against the rule of free speech. Of course, the First Amendment in the United States is the right to free speech. This overview, very helpfully provided by Constitution Annotated, reads as follows. The First Amendment to the US Constitution, viewed broadly, protects religious liberty and rights related to freedom of speech. Specifically, the religion clauses prevent the government from adopting laws respecting an establishment of religion. The Establishment Clause, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, the Free Exercise Clause. The First Amendment Amendment also expressly protects the freedoms of speech, press, peaceful assembly, and petition to the government. So given both the context and the content of Elon Musk's posts, given what's happening and with reference to the UK, it is, in my view, highly likely that this will be considered protected free speech in the United States. And at the very least, it would be protected political free speech in the United States. And given, as I said, the requirement for dual criminality for extradition, if this does not amount to a criminal offence in the United States, which I don't think it does, at least from what I've read so far, then the requirements for extradition would not be met. Now, it's important to remember, of course, that the US does have defamation law. We saw quite famously in the Depp Heard trial, where the burden was different than it is in the UK. It's actually easier to prove in the UK than it is in the US, and Johnny Depp did win that case in the US. However, when we come to political speech or statements of opinion, and even if some people were to view those comments as being potentially dangerous, according to my very rudimentary US case law research, unless those statements directly incite or promote the use of violence, then it is not likely to amount to a criminal offence, and thus it is likely to be protected free speech in the US, and thus the requirement for extradition would not be met. Now, I did say that I'd come back to another point where someone had noted on X that the newspapers again have reported that a judge has warned anybody present at a riot that they might be remanded into custody, even if they were only a curious observer. Now, from what I can see so far, this was a single judge in Northern Ireland, and now I have to emphasise at this point as well that the judiciary is entirely separate from government. Judges will only apply the law as it is when a case is brought to them. Judges are not deciding who is charged with an offence. Obviously, it's the prosecutorial bodies that decide who is prosecuted and they are brought to justice. The police's job to gather evidence to support such a prosecution, and then the court's role in all of that and the judiciary role in all of that is to try the case if such a case comes to court. So for a case like that, for a judge to be involved in someone who was a mere bystander to a riot, there must be some underpinning offence involved with anybody who is quote-unquote observing or as a curious observer to these riots. The first thing that springs to mind is that where there might be a dispersal order. We've seen lots of those around the country in the last few days because, quite rightly, the police have tried to calm the situation and disperse any crowds that are likely to amount to violent disorder. And thus, if someone remains in a dispersal area zone and they are observing what's going on when they're not supposed to be there, then they could be seen as contributing to that overall disturbance. Now, again, don't shoot the messenger. I'm telling you how the courts might interpret this. Some people take everything I say as my definitive view, and I'm either for or against one argument or another. That's not really how it works. An advocate will tell you or the tribunal or the audience, the listener, how something might be applied. So I'm telling you here that this is how it might be applied. If someone were within a dispersal area zone and they remain there observing riots, then they might be seen by prosecutors and ultimately by the judiciary as contributing to the overall disorder. That is probably, without reading too much into it and knowing all of the facts, that is probably, very broadly speaking, why the judge is said to have made these comments. And those are just a couple of things that I'd like to talk about, but I won't cram too much into one video. Please do subscribe if you want the raw truth on how this stuff might apply. And if you want my personal opinions on things, check out my other channel, Black Belt Secrets, linked in the description below. If you want to learn to make money and build successful businesses, check out my other channel, Daniel Shensmith, linked in the description below. And in the meantime, thank you for watching.